call the meeting to order. Everybody join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. We'll move on to citizen comments. Citizen comments. Citizen comments. Seeing none, citizen comments is closed. Announcements from the chairman. On your desk, you have several items. You have a single-page item that belongs to resolution number 98 that was omitted from your packets and omitted from online. So you do have a paper copy of it on each and every one of your desks this evening. We'll move on to supervisor reports. Supervisor Gens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to let the board know that I'm very pleased to announce that a week ago today, we did approve a contract for our public safety software. So with New World Systems. And we also okayed all the finances. It was brought to the various committees and approved. But I just would like to take an opportunity to thank Joint Services staff for all the work they put in, as well as the project manager and all the end users. They were very needed in the process, and it was a very diligent and long process. And I would also like to thank the legal departments with the city and the county. Both really put in a lot of time and effort, as well as the administrations for both the county and the city. So it was a project that's been a long time coming, and I look forward to it progressing. So I would just like to, bring the board up to date on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Noble, you have the floor.
Thank you. At our meeting last Wednesday, we had a couple items that are on tonight's agenda, but one item that will not be on the agenda is a conditional use permit for Yutka Fence, which is on the intersection of E and I-94. He was making an application to modify the operation of his business slightly to include a new display area for what I want to call upscale playground equipment. So he'll have that on display. And then he also wants to build a storage building on his property to store the material for the fences underneath and get it out of the elements. So that was approved by Summerstown Board and by the committee, and will soon make those changes and be on his way to hopefully selling playground equipment.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. Is that it?
That's all.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Noble. Supervisor Anita Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to discuss a topic that we took on at our Judiciary and Law Enforcement meeting, and Chairman Esposito did a great job opening up the dialogue. There's an issue we have in our county with access to mental health care providers. There was a question of what we should do for inmates who have mental illnesses and need treatment. This is a very tough question, but, I think we need to start with what do we know? What do we know? We know that the trend for decades has been to incarcerate our mentally ill. That's nationwide. Here in Kenosha, we know that we can't get mental health care providers into our county. So it's no big surprise that Sheriff Beth can't get healthcare providers into the jail to treat them when they're there. He has budgeted 80 hours of service that he can provide to inmates. He cannot get mental health care providers to come in and fill those 80 hours. which again, as I say, is no great surprise because we can't get them into our area. You know, and you know, this is a really, this is a topic that I care very much about. I think that we want to be very careful about putting a very expensive Band-Aid on this issue about what we do once it's in the jail. It's almost too late at that point. Those issues, you know, we need to expand our mental health courts. We need to address it by bringing in mental health care providers into our area and figuring out how to get these people to not get to the point. You know, we know now dual diagnosis is more common than just a single diagnosis. What I mean by that is somebody who has a mental illness is more apt to become drug addicted or alcohol addicted, which, you know, leads to all kinds of incarceration for drug and alcohol offenses. You know, and then, I mean, let alone the manic behavior and all different kinds of other things that lead to disorderly conducts. And so we need to actually, if we're going to do something about this, we need to address the root cause and not waste taxpayers' money with a huge Band-Aid, which would be what we'd have to do. If we address this at the level of the detention center, we'd pretty much have to build the equivalent of a psychiatric prison for people. We have to start addressing it before they reach that point. And it's a topic that I am really glad was brought up. I'm glad the dialogue's open. I just hope that we stick with it and we actually follow through and do something. You know, this county has been great at being at the forefront, implementing innovative and novel solutions to things. Look what we've done with the economy in the worst time ever for everybody. I think that if we address this, we can actually have a positive impact. We can affect a positive change, but we have to keep the dialogue open and we have to actually do something.
Thank you, Supervisor Anita Johnson. Supervisor Esposito, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, to piggyback on Supervisor Johnson's comments, I wanted to open discussion, a dialogue on this topic. Some of the discussion was brought back to where does it start, so on and so forth. I'm going to touch base with with Human Services and look at you know, what's going on with Kenosha County before they get to this point. So I'll talk to the chairman of Human Services and see what his situation, so on and so forth, because obviously this is a county-wide issue. Again, we don't want to address it while these people are incarcerated. I think that's the end point. We want to get in front of this situation. So I'm glad the dialogue was started. That's the first point to go forward and for positive change in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Esposito. Seeing no other supervisor lights, we'll move on. County Clerk. As far as I'm aware of there.
Can't pick it up.
There you
so-
go. Try it now.
There's no sound coming. These are
Now it
supposed,
is, now it is. You turned something.
I just turned you on now. For your microphone.
now it's on, yeah.
For your microphone.
Well, I don't know. These are supposed to also bring sound to our desk. Too. They're not here for ornaments, you know.
Well, I understand that. We'll have to have IT take another look at it, I guess. Is it all the way up? Your volume's all the way up, I understand, from what we have here on the module here.
I'll have IT check it tomorrow.
Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
County Executive Appointments, 38, Ronald Johnson to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees.
Refer to Human Service Committee.
39, Lauren Fox to serve on the Kenosha County Board of Administrative Appeals.
Refer to Human Service Committee.
40, Bill Erickson to serve on the Kenosha County Board of Administrative Appeal.
Refer to Human Service Committee.
Ordinance, first reading to required from Public Works Facility Committee to create an ordinance of traffic controls at the intersection of County Trunk Highway H and Bain Station Road. 37, from Public Works Facility Committee to create an ordinance on traffic controls at the intersection of County Trunk Highway C and Bain Station Road. Ordinance 38, from Planning Development Extension Education Committee regarding proposed comprehensive plan amendment Brian Philitro and Andrew Phillips, owner, request an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County, 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from office professional services, PEC, and surface water to commercial and surface water in the town of Salem. Noble, yes. Decker, yes. Galitsky, yes. Retzloff, yes. Gable, yes.
Supervisor Noble.
I move ordinance number 38.
Ordinance number 38 has been moved by Supervisor Noble, seconded by Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Noble.
This is on State Highway 50, which is also considered 75th Street, approximately a half mile west of 261st Avenue. We, not too long ago, we did a rezoning on a piece of property where a veterinarian clinic will be located. This particular property is adjacent to that clinic, and they'll be using more than likely a shared driveway with that clinic. And they're just changing the zoning from office professionals to commercial. The water portion of it is still going to stay surface water. There's a little pond in the back of the property. So this actually meets the Salem plan, so Salem actually didn't have to vote on it, but the committee did spend a considerable amount of time questioning the petitioner and approved it with a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Supervisor Noble. This is a simple majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. County Clerk.
Policy Resolution 3, resolution from the Finance Administration Committee regarding CABA to amend county revolving loan fund contract.
Supervisor Rose.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the proposition, I would move to suspend the rules so that we can consider this resolution this evening on a first reading of this resolution. And if I receive a second, I can explain it with more particularity.
Second by Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Normally, this type of resolution comes before the board with 2 readings. This proposition has been discussed at the Finance Committee on 2 separate occasions over the last 2 months. With us this evening is the Vice President of Economic Development for CABA, Heather Westling, who is seated behind me, who can address some specific questions if you have them. The reason we are requesting the suspension of the rules tonight to consider this resolution is so that CABA can present a package here of a purchase of real estate. Part from the town of Salem would sell to CABA the land that they have purchased in western Kenosha County. Additionally, CABA then would purchase additional land from a private owner so that they would own a total of 80 acres. Those transactions are in the works but have not yet been completed. There are contracts and agreements to do that. The sense of urgency that brings this to us this evening for an action on the first reading is that CABA does have a prospective business that may be interested in locating on this property if CABA owns it. The proposition here is, again, Salem conveying part of the land to CABA, a private party conveying the land to CABA, and if that transaction is completed partially with the money that is involved in this resolution, as well as additional funds, they would then be in a position to say, we own this land to the potential client who could purchase it. And that's why we are going to ask this evening the consideration. The other option is to have first reading this evening, consider it at our first meeting in March, and see where it goes from there. But I think this is an important enough proposition with an actual potential serious client that time is of the essence this evening, and that's why we are requesting that you consider the resolution on first reading instead of second reading.
Thank you. Supervisor Guest, you have something to add?
Not on the suspending of the rules.
Very good. Okay, so what we're asking for here is to suspend the rules. We need 2/3 vote. We have a motion to suspend the rules by Supervisor Rose, a second by Supervisor Poole. And if you're in favor of suspending the rules, vote yes. If you're against suspending the rules, vote no.
All right, roll call?
Roll call has been requested. Is that right?
Two-thirds are present. It's not like a budget.
Okay.
So it's 14 instead of 16.
14. Now you can go on and read Terry and all the signatures now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Red,
Oh, hold on, no, what? Now Supervisor Rose, you can make a motion.
All right, yes. The rules
You
have been
move it?
suspended, so I would move the resolution number 3.
Resolution number 3 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. Technically, what comes before
Hold on
you...
1 second. I messed up on that. It's my fault. We need to have all the people that were in favor of it during your particular
I
committee
didn't
meeting.
read the roll.
All right.
So we're going to read the roll for the record, and then we'll move on. Pardon me.
Rose, yes. Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Brunig, yes. Dodge, yes. Gens, yes. Colmeyer, yes.
Okay. Sorry. Supervisor Rose. you
All
have
right,
the
well,
floor.
thank you. Technically, what you have before you this evening is in the amendment to the agreement for business development between Kenosha County and Kenosha Area Business Alliance. Traditionally, this agreement has provided that CABA is essentially acting as a bank, making loans to various businesses under various terms and conditions, and that has been the agreement and practice pursuant to this agreement in the past. So what we are proposing here this evening, at the request of CABA, is to amend that agreement to include something different than they have done in the past, and that is direct economic development by being the developer themselves. Generally speaking, in the past, these loans are made to private businesses or development organizations. CABA has not been the developer themselves. So that's the important amendment that you are considering this evening. The specifics of that, the reason why you are being requested to pass this, is to bring some economic development to western Kenosha County. Now, let me underscore and emphasize that the political leadership there is in support of this amendment, of developing a business park in western Kenosha County. The location of that business park is on Highway C, east of the town's highway and fire department at 254th Court. There would be some 66 acres, which would be for actual business development. The total purchase of the land would be some 80 acres. Some of it would come from Salem, which currently owns it. They would convey to CABA for their actual cost, the land. CABA would purchase additional land from a private person, thus making a total of 80 acres. And they would propose to use $1 million from the county's revolving loan fund toward the $3 million required to both purchase the land and other costs of development. So what you are considering this evening is an amendment to the agreement, which would, one, allow CABA to be in the direct development business, which they have not been before. They become the developer. And two, allowing our loan fund to be used to the extent of $1 million for this purpose, purchase of land, retain different experts, legal counsel, CPAs, whomever, to assist in the development of the transaction here or in the future. So You are allowing them to do this evening for the purchase of this one piece of property, but it certainly could happen again and again and again if you support the amendment to the economic agreement between CABA and Kenosha County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Gentz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know about again and again, but I certainly think that the Finance Committee vetted this on 2 separate occasions and asked detailed questions as far as loan repayment and whether we're going to be in competition with other developments throughout the city and county. So we did stick on this topic for quite a while, and all the questions were answered satisfactorily. And I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think it's something that we really should do. While the casino did not come here, we are blessed with a lot of companies that have been coming here over the past few years, and I think this will just add to our economic development. I think it's a definite plus. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Ritzloff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am generally for this, but I do have some issues or questions, concerns. This is something new for CABA. They're in the development business. I'm wondering if we should, on our this amendment to our revolving loan fund, should we make it case specific just to this project in case this endeavor doesn't work? And we want to make sure about that. Supervisor Rose said this could go on and on and on to other projects. That concerns me a little bit for control purposes and making sure that I'm not in the real estate business, but I understand that this is we build it and they'll come type of thing, and we're not so sure about that, I guess. It is a risk to the county's fund. If it fails, we're out. No question about that, so that's a risk. I know that Supervisor Rose mentioned a potential client. Who is that? Why can't we say if there is? Is it secret? Is it something we can't hear about? That's another question I have. And one of the things that there is a lot of projects going around I-94. One of them isn't going to happen is that Majestic project that we voted on. Sounds like it's not going to happen, but that's a different subject. I am generally in favor of this. I'm just wondering primarily if we want to amend our contract to make it case specific to this project at this time. It's just something I'm bringing up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Ritzloff, we have the representative from CABA here. Do you think that was, you want to ask some questions through me to her?
Well,
I mean, she's here. She's fully
I
vetted in answering the question.
I think it's a decision. Okay, if she wants to answer my concern about having this open-ended loan fund contract for CABA, versus a case specific to this only, I guess is my biggest concern.
Ms. Westling, you have the floor.
She turned on.
There you go.
My name is My name is Heather Westling, and I've been working for the Kenosha Area Business Alliance for about 1.5 years. Actually, this was one of the first projects that I took on, was the initiation of a site specific in western Kenosha County that could be utilized for economic development purposes. Especially speaking of a lot of the deals that are in western Lake County and DuPage County, we find that there's not product to the north in terms of having suitable land sites that are available for businesses. And so we feel that we are missing some of the demand that could be coming online. And we know that specifically because we've received letter of intents, communications from businesses that would like to locate in Kenosha County, further west than our Lakeview Corporate Park or Business Park of Kenosha, and further west than I-94. So given that fact, we wanted some of our loan fund, not all of our loan fund, but a portion of our loan fund, to be flexible to be able to develop this business park. And while I agree that there is risk, the risk is that we have to perform over time, that we have to sell the land over time, but we do have a 10-year performance time period, and if we're able to perform according to a pro forma that was done by Ehlers and Associates, I think that we should be reasonably confident that we should be able to be successful in this business park. And I think it's important for us to look at western Kenosha County simply because if there's so much robust activity along the I-94 corridor, there's only so much time before all of that land is utilized. It's also usually for larger users, and so we see that smaller companies are lacking the ability to purchase the land perhaps along that I-94 corridor. So this would allow us to have more affordable land prices, more affordable land sites that are suitable for smaller projects. And so I think that's the key to having the flexibility for this fund so that we can use it for that specific purpose. I believe we're asking for this portion of the loan fund to be flexible because this is something we want to do in order to initiate private development in the future. So I think that comment that was made by Supervisor Rose is a good one in that we hope that it will initiate development along western Kenosha County in other communities, and we hope that's the start of this. So that's, and then as far as you asked the question about a specific client, we're not at liberty to make a statement if a client has not made a decision. I've worked in economic development for almost 15 years, and a lot of times people will be very excited and want to say who the client is or what the client is doing. And if they haven't made that decision yet, which they have not, so you can consider it speculative at this point if you wish to, we can't name the client when they're still looking at other sites, and the site in Salem is only one of those sites. So, but I can tell you that we have, before this land has even gone online, before we've even gotten to the purchase point, we have several potential clients for the site. So I myself have talked to probably 3 specific clients that would be suitable for this site. So that's why we feel reasonably confident right now to move forward, especially in this economy for Kenosha County.
Supervisor Ritzlaw?
I understand. I guess it's a matter of we are going to commit $1 million to a project that is not guaranteed. She won't tell us who the potential clients are because she can't, but yet one of our supervisors says it's hot to come. I have those concerns, but I may be the only one, so I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Vice Chair Bruning?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of you know who Dan Campion is. He is our town board supervisor in the town of Salem and our liaison between the county and the town. He was not able to be here tonight, but he did want me to let you know that he is in full support of this. The town has been working very hard with CABA, and Dan and I have had many conversations over this, as well as Pat Casey, the town administrator. We are definitely looking forward to this moving forward. Just a couple points that I'd like to remind everyone of. This piece of property is right next to our new fire and highway department. It has a huge water tower next to it. It's shovel-ready. There are 2 pieces of property that are shovel-ready at this time, and I know that there are some businesses that are really seriously looking at these properties to start digging. So, and when Heather does talk about that we're kind of under a time constraint here, we are, because I know that people are looking at their leases that are coming up on their current property, whether or not they're going to renew the lease or if they're going to move out to someplace else. So I do believe that this is an urgent matter at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bruning. Supervisor Noble?
Thank you. A couple questions through the chair. I believe it was pretty clear they said CABA would own the land. How does CABA recover the $1 million? How does that work?
We set up a tax incremental finance agreement with the town of Salem and a development agreement. And within those terms, as development occurs within the TIF district, the increment is used to first pay back the town's debt and then to pay back the debt that CABA has paid towards the infrastructure in the park. So we are one step behind the town, which, if you look at it that way, we're also strengthening the town's ability to do this development in the first place. So they're leveraging our dollars so that they don't have to borrow as much, so that they can put that into the park. So we're sharing the risk between the two parties.
Okay, and you mentioned TIFs, and that was another question I had. I recall that one of the disadvantages of being a town is a town can't do a TIF. How are they going to do a TIF, being that Salem is a town?
Last year, they had asked the legislature to allow them the powers to TIF, and so the state of Wisconsin can grant towns that want to involve themselves in economic development as a TIF district. And actually, the county of Kenosha has two municipalities, Summers and Salem, that have that capacity to create a TIF district for industrial development.
So that's a given that we know they have the capability?
Yes, they have that power. They have TIF powers.
All right. And then you said, is this limiting you to using that same $1 million for developing industrial parks, or can you use other money over and above that same $1 million?
I think that's a really good question, because the mission of CABA continues to be assisting businesses with financial capital towards real estate and towards equipment, and that is a main function of this organization for 20-plus years, and that's somewhat of the reason why we're in such a good financial standing now, is to be able to help companies when they're ready to expand, and we have the capital to do so. So when we went into this process, a lot of the companies have paid off their debt early, have paid back their loans since the recession. They wanted to be in debt-free or close to debt-free. And so we have sort of a large amount of cash on our balance sheet right now. And so we have about half of our assets are liquid. So we have about $15 million. And so we have about $3 million that we would dedicate to this park. And so we still have the funds available so that we can continue to assist businesses. But that's what those funds are for, is to create economic development opportunities. And so we need to find the right types of investments to make throughout the county for new opportunities. And so you don't see any loans in the town of Salem right now because we don't have businesses there to assist them. We have, obviously, in all the way west, we have Allied Plastics and Five Star in Twin Lakes, but we don't have a lot of companies that we assist. And so I think in those certain terms, we should be involved. And so that's why we're getting involved in a business park in the town of Salem.
Okay, but I guess I'm wondering if there's a limit to how much you're going to put into an industrial parks versus how much you're going to be using it for loaning,
Businesses.
Startup money to businesses.
We're capped at the amount. We have $3 million that we're investing in this park, and then the town of Salem is investing about $6 million. So between 5 and 6. So it's about a $10 million project, 9 to 10, but we're capped at that 3. We'll have a development agreement in place, and so these funds will help us to be flexible in that development process.
And then for doing let's say some other industrial park came up, you're sort of capped at $3 million for industrial parks, is that what you're saying?
This is our first industrial park,
Yeah.
so I went through a year's process to find a particular site in a municipality that would be willing to work with us at a pretty high level to create economic development opportunities. I wouldn't say that we wouldn't do it again, But I think the smart thing to do would be for us to work a couple of years into this and see that we're, the first couple of projects are critical in a TIF district. If you get your first couple of projects, all of a sudden you can rerun your pro forma and you have your risk is reduced quite a bit to be able to pay back all the debt and pay yourself back. So I think looking in the next couple of years, we could possibly do another development. I would hope so.
Okay. And then the agreement itself, is this a red line agreement that was in place before? I mean, if it was, I didn't see what was crossed off and what was added. Or is this a brand-new agreement from scratch? Did Corporation Counsel have it review it?
Corp Counsel can answer your question there. Corporation Counsel.
Yes, thank you. Our office rewrote the agreement. The half of it, or more than half of it, is the same as it was in the old revolving loan fund agreement. And the new part just deals with this ability to use some of the money for an industrial park development, or business park development. So the terms are pretty much the same, but it was a bit antiquated, so we plugged in some of the standard clauses that the county uses in its contracts, and made it up to date, basically. The old terms are the same, exactly the same. The way CABA repays these funds is exactly the same, but it's sort of an updated version.
Okay, and essentially the only key difference is this industrial park.
That's
clause.
right. That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Noble. We'll move on to Supervisor Rose.
Let me just address this issue of risk, because we're in the risk business right now. This is exactly what, there's risk involved every time you loan money to businesses, which they've been doing for years. Look at their track record. It's an excellent track record. Now we're talking about risk. This was a decision that you made many years ago to become involved in the attraction of business to this community, which was desperately needed. If you look at the agreement here, authority and purpose, it's for the purpose of attracting and retaining businesses and industry to Kenosha County. If you're not willing to put any money into this, you're not going to attract any business. And I think their track record speaks for itself. I would hope this would be the beginning of a number of industrial developments in this community. I hope some come to the city on the old Chrysler plant location. But here is one where the people in Salem, through their political leadership, are saying clearly they want this. Why should we be questioning that issue? This money was given to CABA as part of our commitment to economic development in this community by this county for this very purpose. I don't want to see this agreement limited strictly to one Salem issue, one Salem development, and every time the CABA has a new proposition, be it in the city or Pleasant Prairie or someplace else for economic development, they have to come to this board and vote on it. I don't want to see that happen at all. That would be a grave mistake. That was brought up at another recent meeting where a similar discussion was had about voting on each project. That's a very, very bad idea. We haven't done that in the past. This proposition here this evening ought to be embraced by everybody, unless you just don't want economic development in the community. But if you supported the idea of economic development at a large scale, the casino, you certainly should support it out here in Salem when the public there, through its political leadership, has confidence enough to believe this is a good idea. Let's bring it here.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Decker.
I just read in, let me see if on page 2, it says, sorry, at the top, one or more municipal business parks and/or municipal industrial parks within the borders of Kenosha in the areas to the west of I-94. where fewer such business industrial parks exist. Does CABA intend to build any industrial parks along the I-94 corridor, but on the west side?
We looked at land just west of I-94 in the village of Bristol. We looked at some of those sites. Frankly speaking, they were probably a little too expensive for us to get involved in our first industrial park there. The land prices were probably about double what we're looking at right now. We looked at, and like I said, we went very far west, and the prices were less, but the prospect of economic development opportunities was also less. So being right there on County Highway C and 83 being less than 2 miles to the Illinois border, being less than 8 miles to I-94, and also all of the business owners that own homes just south there in that Round Lake area in Illinois, gives us a lot of confidence that there's some prospect activity. But in terms of a second business park or a third business park, I think we have to get our feet wet and we have to see that we're comfortable. But the goal is to build business parks where private development is not occurring, and where there's demand. So we see a lot of larger companies. We don't see a ton of smaller companies, but they exist and they just can't afford to come across the border.
Thank you. And I'd just like to make a comment to compare investing in actual businesses versus land and building a business park. Those are two completely different things. You loan a business money, you have a building that you have assets worth. You have chairs, you have desks, you have whatever is in that building that you have assets to back up the money that you are investing. Here you're investing money in land, that you're buying the land, you're sticking all the money into roads and infrastructure. And if that land or the business park doesn't develop, then you're stuck. You have nothing but the land and all the money you spent on putting in the infrastructure. To compare the two things together, that they're the same thing, is just not accurate. So for us on the county board, some of us to have questions, it makes sense. It's not just dive in because some supervisors think this is a good idea. Thank you.
All right. And Supervisor Anita Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I want to say I agree with Aaron. We're looking at apples and oranges here. They have a proven track record, and yet they've been fabulous. We know that. But we also know this is their first foray into this type of venture, which is in itself a higher risk then. That being said, I think we can all agree that it being in Salem is a little bit different than somebody coming and moving their business here that we know about and we're investing in to fill this place because it's in Salem. There is a greater risk. So we owe it to the taxpayers to be a little bit more rigorous with our questions. I mean, we do owe them that. You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Also, I think this will be fabulous, and I hope it, I really, really hope it does fill up, and it does very well, and that there are more. That being said, again, I think that we do owe it to the taxpayers to be more rigorous. I would just like to see a little bit more control. I do have a question for Corp Counsel, too, with regard to information about potential buyers. Aren't we in some type of partnership with CABA? Couldn't we go into a closed session and hear more details? I don't understand why we're not allowed to hear more details. It seems like we are in some type of partnership with them. It would seem like as long as it wasn't public knowledge, if we were to go into a closed session with them, they should be able to give us more details and answer those types of questions to make some of us more comfortable.
You can address that.
That's a very interesting proposal, very interesting look at it. But the information that they have, I believe, like a lot of the lending, that it's our money, but CABA is doing the lending and attracting people, is held confidential for a number of reasons. And it's basically CABA's information at this point. They're a private organization. non-governmental, they don't have the same concerns. We are a partner. We do get a lot of information. But as Todd Battle tells the committees that he reports to and other representatives of CABA constantly tell us, until they sign on the dotted line, we're like wooing, the would-be investor, the would-be developer, and they keep it confidential for business reasons. And it's not a question of public records because it's not public yet.
Sure.
When
Okay.
they enter the loan and they fill out applications, we promise certain confidentiality for their customer lists and other things that they don't want, their bank records, they don't want released to the public. And that, once it becomes shared with us, we promise them confidentiality, so that never becomes public. So even though we might know the names later, when it becomes a solid deal, and CABA is willing and has a track record of giving us a lot of detail on these businesses quarterly and more often, they never tell us everything. Some of it's always going to be confidential. In terms of this business, I don't think she has the right to reveal the names yet, but it's a private thing between CABA and this would-be developer.
I think I can help a little bit too with answering that question. If you're about to buy a house or you're about to buy a business and you go through the very beginning stages and you don't know if there's damage to the home or you don't know if there's damage to the business, and on the other side there's a family that very much wants you to buy that house, or there's an interested party that very much wants to know you're doing it, that company gets even more nervous that you're going to make that decision for them, or you're going to decide for them publicly before they've actually made that decision. I mean, if you look at any of our high-profile companies that have come into our community, including Amazon or Kennel, InSinkerator, they all had their justifications for taking their time before they make a decision. And I do understand that if you're making our fund flexible, that you want to understand why we want it to be flexible and that you want to know how it's subjected to risk. And I also agree with you that building infrastructure in the park is different than loaning money to a business that's going to build it themselves, because you understand the third-party risk. But I also know that if we have this fund and we can't use it for revolving loan funds to the degree we did before, and that there's companies, and we're telling you this, and we can give you more data on the demand in Kenosha County, that almost all of our land that's shovel-ready, robust, ready to go, even Lakeview Corporate Park and in the Business Park of Kenosha, is pretty close to being exhausted. So we don't want to be left without a plan for the future and without a way of making ourselves competitive again. This is also our organization's next step. I feel the risk as to perform. That's the next step. I'm sure my boss feels the same way, that this is our next step. But we feel that we wouldn't be doing the right thing in economic development if we didn't move forward and develop land that's suitable, that the private sector is not looking at right now. And so we don't want to lose those opportunities. But I agree that developing a business park and loaning money to a business are two separate activities. That's exactly why we're asking your permission to do it today.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. My question was actually more to the partnership. I wanted to see if that changed things. I have a lot of faith in the town board in Salem and Dan Champion, and and I think if they're working closely, I have a lot of faith in the project. I do. But that being said, it is risky. This is a really tough one for me to feel really strongly in support of. But I agree that it is a direction we need to start looking at. We need to start developing west of the I more and more. It would be nice to be able to have more details, to feel a little bit more secure about the decision.
Supervisor Gantz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'll address risk. I certainly think that this board, I would hope that the questions were asked on the committee level, and they were. I asked twice about risk and how it would go and how we would be repaid and that type of thing. So we're not going to get in any type of economic development, whether it be with existing businesses or land, without risk. We have to just make sure that we're covered and it's a minimum of risk. But we have every right to ask those questions. We're stewards of the taxpayers' money. And I was very comfortable with the responses I got regarding that risk. So that addresses that. But there's another thing I'd like to ask, and it's through the chair to Bernie. We've been talking about throwing this into other projects, and on the committee level, that might have been, an underlying current, but it really, we were looking at $1 million for this project. And I'm not saying come back for every project. I've read now 3 times while I was waiting the wording, and I did find on page 2, down under the first little 3, number 1, it does say $1 million is the max that can be used for this. Am I correct in that, Bernie?
On the bottom of page 2, under the small Roman 2?
Under number 1, under the Roman 1 where it says $1 million.
Oh. Those limitations and guidelines and that subsection is directed to the old, that's the old language on the loans that they give to a business.
Okay.
So that's, those limitations, all that language deals with the revolving loans that they give, the loans, not the industrial park. The business park development starts, it's Roman 5, starts on page 1 and goes over to about the middle of the second page. So the stuff above Roman 6 is all about the business park, and Roman 6 starts with the loans. And that's the old language. It has been updated a little bit, but that deals with the loan program that you've been doing since 1997.
Okay, but I'm looking at it. Did you replace that with anything else? I mean, that is part of what we have in place, correct?
Right.
They have $1 million to do this.
They have $1 million plus the repayments, which I think it's grown to about $3 million, and right now they have about $1.2 million in cash available under the existing program. So it started off with a little bit less, but it's grown since 1997 and before. So now they have around $3 million. Maybe I didn't answer your question.
Well, you went around it a little bit, but I guess what I want to know is when they came to us for this, numbers were asked, $5 million for Salem approximately, $2 million of CABA's own money, and $1 million from the county's revolving loan fund. Did I hear that correctly? Through the chair to either Terry, Dave Geerdston, or the CABA representative. Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct. Dave, that's correct. That's what our intent is to use $1 million from this fund, $2 million of our own, and between 5 and 6 from the town of Salem. That's the transaction or the terms. We haven't signed it on the dotted line yet because we're waiting on this, but right.
Understand that, but that was what was brought to the committee.
Yes, that's what was brought to your committee. Yep.
So I guess what I'm going to do here is, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that in this resolution, we're authorizing CABA to use the money we give you in the revolving fund to speculate on some land deals for industrial parks. But it's going to be tied to this the number we have given you. I mean, there's not going to be any, for anybody on the board who thinks there's going to be other projects that are spent with just money coming out of CABA and then we're going to be on the hook for it. We're going to authorize what they have to use. Am I correct in that, Dave? Am I correct in that?
Do you want to come and talk?
Bernie, somebody?
I think Dave could probably answer.
Mr. Gersten, could you answer that for us, please?
We're acting on the CRLF, the $3 million, and the term sheet that we have with Salem is just as you stated. We're looking at a $9 to $10 million deal, the county putting $1 million and CABA putting in $2 million. So the total contribution from CABA is $3 million. However, and I'll ask Bernie to confirm this, the contract would permit future endeavors from the CRLF as cash is available for similar business park activity. Of course, CABA would be restricted, whether they have the cash available to do that. And Bernie, do you agree with my interpretation of the contract?
Yes, that's correct.
So it is restricted to what we've given and the repayments they've gotten on our high impact fund. There's
Not the high impact fund.
oh, well, this revolving loan fund.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so there is a finite number. I mean, there's not going to be things entered in on behalf of the county that we're not aware of.
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, I just wanted to clear that up because when it was presented on the board level, there were definite numbers talked about. There was risk talked about. There was questions asked. We spent quite a bit of time on it. And, now I'm hearing, well, we can use it for other things, which is great. I have no problem with that. And that was probably said at the committee, but maybe I didn't put two and two together with it, but.
This million would have to be probably replenished by a successful business park or other repayments from the loan funds before they'd have any money to do it again.
Exactly. So I wanted to make that, I think that will clear up the fact that we're not rolling out an open checkbook to create industrial parks. We are monitoring the money we're giving them in this revolving loan fund, and we're keeping, an eye on it. So it's not just like we're going to all of a sudden be in the land business. I just wanted to address the risk, and I wanted to make sure we were clear on how this is going to go forward. I am in total support of it. My questions are not because I think there's a problem with it. I just want clarity and transparency. So thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you. Supervisor Esposito, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was answered.
Thank you. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Vice Chair Bruning. This will make it possible for Western Kenosha County to share in the boom that Kenosha is experiencing, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Alverman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple of thoughts. I believe it goes back, it's got to be at least 25 years, maybe more, when I was on the village board in Twin Lakes, my first involvement with CABA. And that was with John Beekler, who was the first man in charge of CABA. And it was a new idea. I'm not sure how long it's been. But if it didn't work, there would have been no money to lend to the next person, the next person, and the next person. Naturally, I'm in Twin Lakes. There's been some pretty good-sized players from there, naturally not Amazon. Now, I don't know what Amazon spent, but we have Five Star that was mentioned this evening. They were one of the first ones. They spawned Allied Plastics. Now, Allied Plastics in Twin Lakes is the largest employer, 170 employees. They just did a CABA deal this year, a big new expansion. And they're in Genoa City, they're in Burlington, they're expanding all over the place. So if you do 10 of those, and there's going to be more than 10 in this 80-acre industrial park, you're talking more than what Amazon brought into Kenosha County. These are medium-sized companies. This is what you're looking for. Salem, if you ever drive around there, until this recession hit, was the boom in the whole county. There are thousands of people that live there. It's the largest K-12 school in the state of Wisconsin. There's people looking to bring their businesses and their jobs where they live. I think it's a beautiful choice. The biggest thing that I would say here this evening is I've seen this work for all these years. If it did not work, there would have not been any of this money to blow up the expansion that Kenosha County has had. With the help of CABA, with the administration here, with the city, with the county, with all of us. So when something is this successful, I don't think you slow it down. And we should approve this evening, and naturally we can't handcuff CABA because government doesn't work as well as private industry, and we don't want us involved in this. We have some of the purse strings, but they have done a heck of a job because they're a private entity, and we all know what happens with government. So I'd urge everybody's approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Overman. Supervisor Rose.
I move the previous question.
Question's been moved. Been seconded by Supervisor O'Day.
Roll call.
Do a roll call item?
Yeah, it's a majority vote.
Okay, this is a simple majority vote. A roll call has been requested. All those in favor would vote yes. All those opposed would vote no. Two-thirds of present is
2/3
14,
present,
right?
that's 14.
So it passes 17-3 to call the question.
Roll call requested on the proposition.
Roll call is requested on the proposition. We'll wait a second to vote on that. Vote on resolution itself.
Yes.
Policy number 3. In a second. You ready? Yes if you're in favor of policy 3, no if you're against.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Clear the board here.
No, your turn's all right. It doesn't do it till you clear it. The color doesn't change till you clear it.
Okay, we'll move on.
Resolution 93 from Finance Administration and Judiciary and Law Committees regarding 2014 Hazard Mitigation Planning Grant. Judiciary and Law, Esposito, yes. Anita Johnson, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Arrington, yes. Ron Johnson, yes. Blau, yes. Poole, excused. Finance, Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Brunig, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes. Colmeyer, yes.
Supervisor Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 93.
Resolution 93 has been moved by Supervisor Esposito, seconded by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a grant that was awarded to the Kenosha County Sheriff's Division of Emergency Management by the state of $30,000 from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. It's $40,000 total. $5,000 is being provided by Sewer PAC, $5,000 in a match for local Kenosha County. This $40,000 grant is a grant that is mandatory for Kenosha County to have in place if there is a disaster and we want funds that FEMA would come in and give us money back for natural disasters, so on and so forth. So it's part of a checklist. If we do not have this in place, we could have a natural disaster and somebody could apply for monies from FEMA and they would not get it. So this is part of the process, I guess, in going forward, being, I guess, eligible to collect FEMA funds for natural disasters. So I urge your approval. Thank you.
Okay, we've got one light on this. Supervisor Noble?
I guess the only thing I see kind of unusual here is, I guess my question is, if Kenosha County is going to subcontract with Southeastern Regional Planning Commission for $40,000, which is the amount of the grant, how does Sewer PAC provide $5,000 local in-kind match? I've never seen that before. How does that work?
Can you answer that for him, Supervisor Esposito?
I believe that includes the cost of staff time devoted to the project, office time, meeting mileage, et cetera. That's the question he's asking me.
Yeah, but we're still going to be giving them $40,000 for the contract, so how do they demonstrate that they've put in $5,000 that they didn't charge us for?
I can't answer that question. I guess, can you rephrase your question, because I don't quite understand what you're asking me.
Like I said, that's the only thing I see that's unusual. I've never seen that before.
Perhaps Terry can answer it.
Terry can answer that.
No, I mean, yeah,
So, however it happens, though, the state is okay with it?
yes.
Okay. I'd just like to hear how, as an accountant, I'd like to know how that process works.
I don't know, I'm not an accountant.
Okay. I can find out later. I just would like to know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the issue wasn't brought up, and I'm not saying it's not a good question. I'll be more than happy to find out and give you the information, Supervisor Noble.
I'm going to let Supervisor or Vice Chair Bruning address this. She was
Okay,
part
yeah,
of
and she's
that.
had a lot of dealings with Sewer PAC, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Noble?
Supervisor Noble, Sewer PAC has done this for many years. They do in-kind contributions or work for the county, and I can tell you that with federal and state funding, anytime you get a grant, you have to have someone who is doing in-kind work to sort of match the funds that they are giving you. Now, it's not going to always be one-on-one, so they're going to give us $40,000, but Sewer PAC is going to do $5,000 worth of in-kind work for us. It could be in the filing fees. It could be the paper that they have to purchase in order to do anything for us. But it all rolls back. They're going to have to write a report to the federal government in order to get that money.
So they're going to have to
comes
show
through.
that they put in an extra $5,000 over and above the 40.
Yes.
Okay.
Does
That's
that
my
answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Bruning. This is a budget modification. It requires 2/3 vote. Those in favor of the resolution, vote aye. Those opposed, vote no.
Resolution 94 from Finance Administration and Judiciary Law Committee regarding the disbursement of funds for Joint Services Software Project. Judiciary and Law Esposito, yes. Anita Johnson, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Arrington, yes. Ron Johnson, yes. Leah Blau, yes. Poole, excused. Finance, Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Gentz, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Brunig, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rowe?
I would move the resolution.
Resolution 94 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Esposito. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. As you recall, this is the resolution that has come into the board in one form or another on a number of occasions regarding the software proposal to replace that which we currently have. It is to be partially paid by the county and partially paid by the city. As Mr. Gentz earlier said during the report section of the meeting, a contract had been extended and the software provider chosen, and during the course of our early discussion on this, unlike a lot of resolutions, a resolution was passed which is here this evening, authorizing the disbursement of funds for the purchase and funding of this public safety software. In the past, we have bonded for it. We've approved that. This resolution is slightly different in that we are now approving the disbursement of funds. Generally, that we have not done that, but early on there were a good many questions about the whole replacement issue. So since the Joint Services Board has selected the provider, as Mr. Gentz indicated, we are now authorizing the disbursement of $1.7 million toward that $3 million project. I would just bring to your attention this evening that there will be in the 2016 budget a request for an additional $281,000 not anticipated and not currently authorized, which would provide for the additional funding of the total project. The costs apparently are greater than anticipated when this was first considered in the 2014 budget, and the committee was informed that the 2016 budget would include that additional $281,000.
Very good. I'm seeing no lights on this. This is a simple majority vote. So all those in favor of Resolution 94, vote aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes. County Clerk?
Resolution 95 from Finance and Administration Committee and Planning Development Extension Education Committee regarding proposed budget amendment to accept grant funding for STEM project with Trevor-Wilmot High School, or Trevor-Wilmot School. Noble, yes. Decker, yes. Gable, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Retzloff, yes. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. John O'Day, yes. Gentz, yes. Kohlmeyer, yes. Brunig, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Noble?
I move resolution number 95.
Resolution 95 has been moved by Supervisor Noble, seconded by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Noble.
This is a grant called STEM grant, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, for the elementary school in Trevor and Wilmot Grade School. Right now, they are doing a project similar to this in the city of Kenosha, and this will be the first attempt at doing it west of I-94, and this $10,000 grant will get the project started.
Thank you. Seeing no lights, this is a budget modification. It requires a 2/3 vote. If you're in favor of the resolution, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay.
From Planning Development Extension Education Committee regarding proposed comprehensive plan amendment, Bill Filtrot and Andrew Phillips, owner, requested an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035 from office professional services, PEC, and surface water to commercial and surface water in the town of Salem. Noble, yes. Decker, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Retzloff, yes. Gable, yes.
Supervisor Noble?
I move resolution number 96.
Resolution 96 has been moved by Supervisor Noble, seconded by Supervisor Ritzloff. Supervisor Noble.
This resolution is the same property that we had the ordinance earlier on. It's on in the town of Salem on Highway 50, and it basically does the same thing, only it's in the form of a resolution which the state requires, which changes it from office professional services to a commercial comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Seeing no lights, this is a simple majority vote. All those in favor of Resolution 96, vote aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. County Clerk.
Resolution 97 from Finance Administration and Public Works Facilities Committee regarding a request and accept grant funding for a civilian conservation corp monument at Fox River Park. Public Works, Alberman, yes. Grady, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Galitsky, excused. Poole, yes. Finance Admin, Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Gens, yes. Brunig, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Alverman.
I move Resolution 97, Mr. Chairman.
Resolution 97 has been moved by Supervisor Alverman, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Alverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to allow the Director of Parks to act on our behalf, apply for a grant, and if we receive the grant, accept the funds. Many of you, it's a part of our history, the CCC camps during the, what they call the Great Depression. Kenosha County, which is now Kenosha County Park, Fox River Park was purchased by the government for a CCC camp. If you travel around the state, you'll see plaques at these camps. There was many of them. And commemorating what happened there, our Director of Parks, Mr. Rudy, has done a fantastic job putting some of that history together in photos and documentation. This particular park, a little bit of history, was purchased from my grandfather. That was part of his dairy farm. So I would ask for your approval. We have been very good at receiving these grants, and this would let us add a piece of history to that corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no lights, this is a budget modification. We need a two-thirds vote. All those in favor of Resolution 97 would vote yes. If you're opposed, vote no. Passes unanimously. County Clerk.
98, resolution from the Finance Administration and Public Works Facilities Committee regarding Kenosha County Public Snowmobile Trail funding. Alverman, yes. Grady, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Galitsky, excused. Poole, yes. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Gens, yes. Brunig, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Alverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 98.
Resolution 98's been moved by Supervisor Alverman, seconded by Supervisor Colmeyer. Supervisor Alverman.
Mr. Chairman, this is something that we do every year. We have 76.9 miles of snowmobile trails in Kenosha County. The money that is taken in from people registering their snowmobiles and off-road vehicles is used to pay for the maintenance on that, on those trails. Kenosha County is the conduit for the money, and it is dispersed to the snowmobile organizations that do the actual maintenance and work on the trails. So we're asking again for our for Mr. Rudy to apply to the state for the money, and then that money is dispersed from the county to the snowmobile clubs. It is for maintenance, and as you see on your other form here, it can be used for acquisition, and normally that, if there is a minor acquisition like you see here, that would be usually for an easement, small little piece that needs to connect. Ask for your approval.
Thank you. Oops. Yeah, I got that. Supervisor Ritzlaff, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question, due to Chair. If there's no snow, is this, so we do this every year? Is that what happens, depending on the weather, or is this just a question?
Well, I think you can venture to...
Okay.
I can answer.
All right.
Yes, the clubs still purchase their equipment. They go out, if you'll see in the fall, they go out and they put all the markings and trail markings and things up. So the maintenance is there. It's, they have to do their bookkeeping, show where the money's spent. So yes, and they still, people still register their vehicles. So there's funding for it every year, whether there's snow or not.
Okay.
I'll venture to guess it's going to snow in Wisconsin, so. Is there anything else for you, sir? Seeing no other lights, this is a budget modification, requires two-thirds vote. Vote yes if you're in favor, or no if you're against, please.
Andy M. Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning Development Extension Education Committee.
I will receive and file.
Claims, Valley and Green, personal injury.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Perry Brooks, personal injury.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Juan A. Zavala, vehicle damage from plow.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Approval of the February 3rd, 2015 minutes by Supervisor Grady.
Supervisor Grady?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
It's been moved to approve the minutes, seconded by Supervisor Esposito. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. We have a motion to adjourn?
Here.
It's been moved by Supervisor Anita Johnson to adjourn, seconded by Supervisor Dodge. All those in favor of adjournment, vote aye. Aye. All those opposed. Thank you. Have a great evening.
They said